Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to today's session. Today we'll be talking property matters brought to you by Accent Realty and supported by Accent Radio. And I'm your host for today again. My name is Destiny Unuante Ijibo. And our topic for today is how to leverage on mortgages to increase wealth and investment portfolio. The topic again is how to leverage on mortgages to increase wealth and investment portfolio. Now, you may want to ask, what is a mortgage? Now, mortgage is a contractual relationship that exists between two parties, a legal relationship that exists between two parties, wherein the person who is requesting for something, which in this case is the money, is known as the mortgagor. A mortgagor is someone who gives out his own property as a security that he is going to repay a certain amount of money that is taken from someone who is known as a mortgagee. A mortgagee is someone who gives out a loan and takes security that a loan will be repaid at a certain date. Now, when you are taking out a mortgage, it gives an assurance to the person who is giving you the loan that the money that he or she is giving out to you will be repaid. Because of this situation where persons who take loans find difficult to repay, even when they have the money, sometimes they will tell you, this money that I have is not meant to repay you at this point in time. Wait for some other time, I will sort things out before paying you. But when you have a security to give to this person that, okay, I have a property, a property worth so amount of money, I'm willing to give this property to you to assure you that when you give me this money, I am going to repay. Now, what do you do with this mortgage property? Being a security, you can always, being a mortgagee, sorry, you can always sell that property when the person whom you have given out this property, giving out this money, fails or refuses to pay the amount which you have loaned to him. Now, why do people choose mortgage? Now, the essence of mortgaging a property is to get money, to get funds to finance certain projects that you may have at hand. Now, we understand the situation of the economy doesn't make room for everyone to have enough money to fund whatever project he or she wants to engage in. So in the light of that, the best option you may want to use, instead of selling off your property to meet up a certain demand that is required of you, you rather mortgage your property, you rather give out your property as a security just to assure the person that is giving you that loan that you will repay in due time. So you are also further assuring the person, if I fail to pay, you can take this property in place of that amount. However, it is important to note that when a property is mortgaged, the possession and the title may be transferred to the person who is the lender, the mortgagee in this instance, temporarily, maybe for a period of 10 years, depending on the duration that is granted in that loan that was given to the mortgagor. Now, once the mortgage continues to run, you have no right to take over that property as the mortgagor until you have fully repaid the sum which you have taken out as a loan. Now, when you redeem uh, that loan which you have taken out, then you can have access to your property again. That's what you use mortgage for. Now, before you go into mortgage, before you mortgage your property, what are the things you need to consider? You have a project that you want to finance. Let's say you have a building project particularly. You have seen that a certain place, they have a nice property that they are selling at a cheaper rate, and you have a property somewhere that is not being used for any other thing other than maybe residential. You have given it out to tenants. Now, you don't want to rely on what the tenants are paying, because for you to wait for them, it will take years before you're able to do anything from the money that these tenants are paying. So in order not to keep waiting and not to go about begging friends and colleagues to support a project you want to go into, you rather use that your property which you already have as a collateral for the property that you want to acquire. Now, what are the things you need to do first of all before engaging in mortgage transaction? Now, the first thing you need to do is to ascertain what kind of property you want. Let me quickly state here that mortgages are created in two forms, so that when you are creating any legal relationship, you should know the type you want to create at a particular point in time. Now, the two types of mortgages that we have legal mortgage and we have equitable mortgage. Now, what is legal mortgage? Legal mortgage is that contractual relationship that is done by deed. Just like you have a deed of assignment when you sell off your property. When you sell your property, you don't have any right over that property again. But in mortgages, you also do a deed of mortgage. Now, this mortgage is registered with the government, registered with appropriate authorities, just like you perfect your title when you have assign your property to someone else. Let me also add here that when you are mortgaging a property, if the property, maybe the tenure that was granted to you by the government is 20 years, you cannot mortgage a property for 21 years. Rather, you must mortgage the property maybe 19 years and 360 days. But there must be some days left for the property to return back to the person who granted you the original term that you enjoy. Now, how about equitable mortgage? Equitable mortgage is a mortgage that is created between party A and party B, mortgagor and mortgagee, that does not fully comply with legal mortgage. Now, I said when you are creating a legal mortgage, you must draft the papers and you have to register it with the government. Now, if you do not register with the government, it means it becomes an equitable mortgage. Equity states that that which ought to be done is equity says that has done which ought to be done, which means you as the mortgagor and the mortgagee, you intended to create a legal mortgage, but maybe due to some circumstances you have already drafted the deed, but you were unable to register that deed of mortgage with the government. It becomes an equitable mortgage. Another way an equitable mortgage could be created is when you deposit your title documents with the mortgagee. Maybe because of time factor, you don't want to go through the stress of having to draft agreements and all of that, or process the deed after it has been perfected. So you want another route which you could use, and this way you just deposit the title documents of that property with the person who is giving you the loan, in this case the mortgagee. Now, what are the things you need to consider before you engage in mortgage transaction? The first thing you must do is to ascertain the worth of your property which you want to use as a security. Now, you need to be sure that the property you are using can sufficiently cover for the loan you want to take. Let's say, for instance, you have a property that is worth 1 billion and you intend to borrow 15 million, or you want to get a loan of let's say 900 million. You need to get estate valuers or property value, as the case may be, to value that property. Let them ascertain the current market value of your property. It is when you are able to determine what the value of the property is that you're able to approach the relevant institution or bodies or persons that are going to give you this loan. If your property is worth 1 billion, for instance, and you want to take a loan of 50 million, that means your property is way higher than the loan you want to take. Now, also, if you want to take a loan of 1.5 billion and your property is just 1 billion naira, so you need to be sure of what your property is worth. This will guide you on the amount you are worthy to take as as a mortgagor, what the property can fetch you. That's one thing you need to do. Then another thing is to get a property that is really viable, that can give you returns for the loan you want to take. You don't just go about investing in property without knowing that this property can give you returns. You cannot take out a loan in the city to build a house in the village. What benefit are you going to get from it? It means that house in the village cannot fetch you even a dime. The best you can get from it is residential purpose. You maintain the property. You must ascertain the property you want to invest in and be sure that the property you want to invest in can easily give you a return. And you also need to be sure that within time you can always recoup the money to pay up that loan. Then you need to ascertain the amount you want to borrow. You have a property that is worth 1 billion. How much do you need? Is it 500 million you need to finance your project? Is it 200 million you need to finance your project? You must ascertain the amount of money that you'll be needing to complete that project. It is not enough for you to know you have a property that is worth 1 billion naira, for example, and you go about borrowing. You need to be sure that, okay, I need 50 million for this, I need 50 million for this. It is when you have done all of this that you'll be able to say, okay, this is the amount that I can take out as loan, and I can comfortably pay back when the time arises. Then another thing is you need to do, which is the fourth one, is to search institutions that give out loans. There are several bodies that give out loans for to finance projects. We have we have Federal Mortgage Bank, we have different commercial banks, and we have other mortgage banks that are in existence that you can always approach. Now, there are some things you must consider before you approach any of these institutions. One of those things you need to consider is the term to be granted for that loan. Now, by term, we mean the number of years or months that they will require you to repay the loan. You can't take out a loan to finance a project that may take, let's say, 5 years for you to complete the project, and you are taking a loan that the tenure to be granted to you is 10 years, or let's say 6 years, for instance. It means you will not have even enough time to recoup some funds from the projects you are engaging in. Therefore, it is important for you to know the term that you'll be granted that loan. Then other thing you may want to consider is the terms and conditions. Every institution has its own terms and conditions. So you must ascertain, okay, are these terms favorable? One of those terms you may want to look at is the interest rate. Some institutions, they give you a loan and you mortgage your property in return. They give you interest rate as high as 20% or even 21% per annum, or as per the term which was granted to you. Let's say you were granted a 5-year term. They may say, okay, we are taking 20% for the 5 years, or we are taking 20% per annum. So you must be able to determine the term that is most favorable to you. Different institutions, they have different terms that they follow. Some 20%, some 10%, some 15%, even some 6%. Now, you need to be sure, okay, can I repay with this high interest rate? If this project is going to fetch me, let's say at the end of the day, you are going to get a profit of 500 million, for instance, and you are borrowing 250, plus the interest and everything rises to 400. Okay, is it a good deal? Is it worth the troubles? Or okay, the project at the end of the day plus interest, everything is going to cost you 450 or 500 at the end of the day. Is it worth the stress? Those are the things you want to consider. Then another thing you also want to consider is the mode of repayments. There are some that may require you to pay a certain amount on certain dates. If you don't pay on a particular date, there's a default fee that you must pay. Let's say, for instance, you want to be repaying every year. Let's say the term granted is 20 years, you have to pay the sum of 100 million naira every month or every year, as the case may be. But they now tell you, if you fail to pay on a certain date, let's say 31st of each month or 28th of each month, if you fail to pay on the 28th of that particular month, you are going to pay extra 10 million for your failure to meet up with payment on that particular date. So these various institutions, they have terms that they apply to the sum they give out as loans. So you must consider all of these things holistically before engaging in any of these transactions with any of these institutions. Now, the institutions, I listed a few of them just now. Now, let's look at them very quickly. Now, Federal Mortgage Bank. This is the highest loan giving institution in Nigeria when it comes to property investment. Now, this institution, Federal Mortgage Bank, they give you a loan for as low as 6% interest. Now, there are some others that may give you higher amounts, higher interest, but Federal Mortgage Bank, they give you interest rate at 6%. So, if you are going to consider going into property investment, you need to consider, first of all, using the Federal Mortgage Bank, because it has low interest rate. Another interesting thing that you may want to look at this level is the term granted in this loan. Now, they give you up to 25 to 30 years for you to repay the loan. If you decide to go into a project that may, let's say, 5 years, as I earlier mentioned, or even 10 years, and you know before you can get profit from that property you are investing in, you take another 15 years, then the best option you should take is Federal Mortgage Bank, because of the low interest rates and the term they can grant to you as well. Then you have the Federal Housing Corporation, and at state level they also have their own too. So you might also want to approach them. They also build homes and they give out to the public. Now, if you approach any of these institutions, they have different terms that they may grant to you. Like Lagos State has its own, Ogun State has its own. All the states of the federation, they have their various housing corporation, which is established to make property available to all members of the public. Another institution you may want to contact is the commercial banks. All the banks in Nigeria, they have certain amount that is set aside to foster development of property in Nigeria. So there are some that are committed particularly to ensure almost everyone in Nigeria has a property to his name. So you may want to approach them. However, the problem with meeting this financial institution is that most of them have interest rate at 21%. So if you are going to get a loan that you have to pay 21% interest rate, you must be sure that it is worth it. How much are you going to gain at the end of the day? If you consider your profits and your expense at the end and it's not worth it, I would advise that you consider other options before considering commercial banks. Another thing is the term granted with commercial banks is usually very short. The most they can give you is 10 years. So their term usually between 5 and 10 years. So when you are considering engaging in long-term projects, visiting commercial banks for loans may not be in your best interest. But if you have a short-term project, let's say the project is going to be completed within a year, and you are sure of getting back your investments within 4 years or 5 years, then you can engage these commercial banks to give you loans. Then another one you may also want to consider is National Housing Fund. So this one was established by the federal government. What they usually do is to make everyone, if you are in employment, you can easily access loans from this person. All they require from you is to make certain deposits into their own account. So you have to open an account with them and be making deposits into their accounts, let's say monthly basis. You will set aside certain amount of your, let's say your salary or your income
at the end of the month. For those who are into businesses, you set aside certain amounts, you pay it into an account which you have opened with them. So when you are the sum you have paid into that account, which is a certain amount, then they can allocate a certain portion of their property to you, either to develop for you personally, or they give you some funds to finance your own property. So that's one you may also want to consider. But the challenge is this project is not always available to the general public, because certain persons who have the financial capability, they always tend to hijack the process, then giving out to the public at the end. So they buy first and they sell it to the public, because it requires a deposit.
Not a poor man on the street cannot easily be able to meet up with some financial requirements for this to be met. Also, there are also private individuals who, that's private developers. They develop property and they decide to give it out to other persons who make initial deposits. Let's say a property is developed at the rate of 50 million. So the property developer may tell you, okay, you can deposit 20 million and spread the balance across 10 years, or spread the balance across 7 years, depending on your arrangements with that private developer. So, however, they may want to charge some interest rates, but most times this one is also a good option. You are put in possession immediately. You don't need to go through the stress of building that property yourself.
Once they have developed the property, you go into the property and you start enjoying it. All you need to do is to show some level of commitment by making certain deposits that the person may require. These are private individuals, so they vary from one individual to the other what the person may require of you to give as a deposit. It may be half of the value of the property, or maybe 25% of the value of the property, sometimes 40%. So when you negotiate with that person, you'll be able to know, okay, this is the amount I am going to pay for me to take possession of this property. Now, some other institutions that give loans, which time may not permit us to go into to digest properly. You have Abbey Building Society, we have AG Home Savings and Loans, we have Aqua Savings and Loans, we have ASO Savings and Loans, we have Benz Mortgage Bank. So there are different mortgage banks that you will find around. Anywhere you go, when you go around the city, you see mortgage banks. They are into property development. Their main goal is to ensure that everyone has a roof over his or her head. So you can always approach any of these mortgage banks. That's their primary duty. Unlike commercial banks that give out loans to other projects, but mortgage banks, their primary goal is to make sure that everyone has access to funds to finance their own building projects. In conclusion, what you need to consider to benefit from this mortgage is to ensure that you have a valuable asset which can be used as a security. You have just one property and you need to get into other space. Let's say you have one property in Lagos Island and you have seen that in a few years from now, a certain place in Lagos mainland is going to be a hot cake. We know that property value appreciates every day, so you may want to mortgage your property on the island to get a property on the mainland. Also, you have a property on the mainland, you may want to also share in the profits that people are making on the island. You can as well approach these institutions we have listed, having considered the conditions we also told you to also look at, then you know you are good to go. So you must be sure that you have the ability
to pay this interest and the loan amount that will be given to you in any mortgage transaction before getting in. However, if you have cash, you can always pay cash, but if you don't have it, mortgage is always the best option you may want to consider. So this is how far
We can go today, and we hope to see you next week, where we'll have to we'll guide you on how you can easily recover money. For those who are mortgage institutions, you can get to have your own money back without going against any laid down rules of recovery. Thank you for your time. You can always follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and all other channels. We're always here to serve you. And if you have any questions, you have comments that you want to make on the topic, or you have any questions you want to ask, we are always available. You can reach us at info@lawassents.com.